You're watching Analysts After Dark, an underground hideaway where insatiably curious analysts examine provocative project problems, share salacious secrets, and establish a covert network of co-conspirators. Step into the dark with your hosts, AJ Hawley and Steve Jones.
Well, hello there, Steve. How you doing?
I am doing great, AJ. How are you?
Fantastic. Well, I think we should probably introduce ourselves to everybody, let them know who we are. Would you like to do the honors?
Sure. I'm Steve Jones, and I've been a business analyst for about 25 years. A little crazy. I've been in all kinds of businesses. Started with sales. Now I'm doing computer stuff, then working into insurance, and now I'm doing energy.
Wonderful. I've been in the BA space for about 15 years. Started out in software development, realized that I was not going to be paying bills doing that, and moved into business analysis. Now do Dynamics 365 consulting, and I've been an independent consultant with my own company for the last 2.5 years, and just been loving that. So business analyst through there, functional consultant, and then just public speaker as well. So been speaking at some of the PMBA conferences. So give a shout out to there. Met some lovely people, and that's where I met this wonderful human that we have on the show tonight, Coach Vic. We're going to bring Coach Vic in. So Coach Vic is a motivational speaker, executive coach, and diversity, equity, and inclusion strategist who uses leadership development principles to teach, lead, and prepare people for how to embed purpose-driven habits so they might one day leave mediocre ones in the past. Welcome to the show, Coach Vic. How you doing?
What's up, fellas? I'm amazing. How about you?
Fantastic.
I'm fantastic as well.
Good to see y'all, man. Can I just start this off by saying I'm so proud that this is kicking off tonight, and I'm humbled that I could be the first guest. I know we've talked about this for a while, man. I can't tell you how proud I am.
That's true. That's actually how we started. We said who we're going to do first. It's got to be Coach Vic, because I was on your show 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know. COVID time. I feel like 2 years, 5 years. You never really know how time actually progresses. But yeah, right. I said I was going to start my own show, and it was going to be a different theme. And you said, all right. And I made you a promise that you'd be the first guest on that show. And here you are.
I knew you were a man of your word. I just had to be patient enough to see it through.
I had to be patient enough myself to say, hey, this is when we can do this.
Coach dropped the challenge, and AJ picked it up.
He did, but that just speaks to who he is, you know.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, as you know from all the previous episodes, the first thing that we do is start out asking a question. And we ask a question, what is your favorite after dark activity? Now, you provided that answer for us, and you said, my favorite after dark activity is spending quality time with my family as we smile, laugh, and reflect on life's journeys together. Aww. Man, is that not the most wholesome thing you've ever heard? That's like Little House on the Prairie type stuff. What is going on?
Well, I had other responses because it was you that was asking that I said, no, I can't say that. No. So I couldn't send the ones I deleted, so I went with that.
I thought you could have, but I think what you're trying to say is that I would have read them on air. And exactly. Then, okay, that makes sense. That tracks. Well, actually, I do know that's true. You have family game night often, right? That's one of the things that you guys kind of pride yourselves on.
Yeah, we do, man. I got to a place in my life where family used to be at the bottom of the list because I felt like they would always be there. And so if I got work together, if I got, my hobbies together, if I got all that stuff done early on, I could always finish my day with family. Well, the problem with that is they told me they felt like an afterthought, and I didn't have much gas in the tank to give them what they needed from me, unlike what I was giving to the world. So at some point, a switch flipped in my head and I said, I got to prioritize them more and be more intentional. One way to do that is we just plan family time in the evenings to spend together. It feels like an accident, but we try our best to eat dinner together. We will host game nights. We got one coming up here soon. I'm a little, creative genius. So I'll Google some games or some ideas and I'll add a little twist or a spin. My family looks at me crazy when I tell them the instructions, and then they still do it and have a blast. So I'm going to keep it going.
I like that. My wife and I have a rule together where while we're playing a game, we can say anything that we want to each other to kind of psych each other out. And it gets very vicious very fast. But at the end of the game, it's all about the game. It was all about just being able to psych the other person out, say some mean things, and then it's cathartic, really.
And I'm pleasantly cutthroat.
Correct.
I couldn't imagine that. Like, my wife says some things and it's like, are we playing the game or is this really how you feel?
And then just get to talk about it afterwards. Yeah, it's great.
So do you have a rule also that says what happened or what is said in the game stays in the game?
We've not crossed any lines yet, so we'll see how long this rule lasts. It's lasted so far. We'll see how long it continues.
All right.
Let's talk a little bit about you. Oh, so wait, first of all, before we do that, Steve, what about you? What is your favorite after dark activity?
I'm a little bit of a gamer. Not a ton, but I enjoy gaming. Right now, my thing is Project Zomboid. It's available through Stream.
All right.
It's a lot of fun. You can do multiplayer, and it's a zombie survival.
Very cool. The last zombie game I played was Left 4 Dead, and that tells you anything about how recent that's been. It's fair.
It's a lot of fun. What about you, AJ?
So I'm a night owl anyway. So if you see me up at 5 a.m., it's because I'm still up, not because I got up. And so, wow. Yeah, and that's just me. If I just kind of float where the party is, and wherever it's what's happening, I'm there. So I don't know that I have a favorite thing, but I find my energy, I get a second wind at about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and then I can stay up till 2 just getting stuff done or whatever. It's kind of weird.
Do you like raid the fridge in the middle of the night? I'm
not that person. I'm going to eat most of it, just big dinner, but yeah, it's going to be big meals and that's it. So
got it.
See, I'm a little crazy with my gaming because I end up applying analysis as I'm gaming. I take it a little too far because I want to win.
I want to win, but then if you ever played Ticket to Ride with my wife, it's just like she's insanely good at that, and I'm like, how did you? No, it's very frustrating. So, Coach Vic, let's talk a little bit about you and your experience and get to know you a little bit. So, you've been a sales manager for a while before leading into this new career path, and wanted to get a little bit of your perspective around selling things as analysts. So oftentimes we as analysts have to either sell our perspective or an idea, right? We have to either come to the business from development and they want to do tech debt, and we have to sell that, say, hey, we need to put away your or deprioritize one of the items that you've got, and we need to do some tech debt this iteration, or vice versa. They want to do something on the business side that development doesn't necessarily want to do. So can I ask you, how can analysts collaborate and use some sales tactics to get their point and what they want done?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that question, that perspective. One, because it speaks to the fact that sales is applicable to every aspect of the business. There are a lot of people who say they hate sales, they never want to do sales, and they don't realize that they've been selling every day of their life because they've been selling themselves, selling their ideas, which essentially is trying to convince someone to do or say something in our favor, right? Something that we want. My definition of sales that I would first share to help is your ability to predict how a person will act or think based off something you say or do.
Okay.
So I'll say it again. Your ability to predict how a person will act or think based off something you say or do. The example I often give, most people hate that their personal space gets invaded, right? So if I'm going to lean in to somebody's personal space, what are they likely to do? Lean away, right? I'm too close in their bubble. Well, the salesman in me is going to predict that they would lean away. So when I lean in, I put my hand behind their head. So when they go to lean back, they can't. They got to stay right here and interact with me, right? I knew that they were going to do it.
So we're talking about proverbial hand, correct?
Proverbial.
Oh, understood.
Correct. Well, we are after dark, so I didn't know if that was acceptable.
This is not that kind of a show.
Got it. Here's how I think analysts, or at least a couple of thoughts that sales could help analysts in selling their ideas. One of the first rules that they teach you about sales is everything is negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
And they do that to set or level set the mind and all the parties involved around, I'm not going to get everything I want in this. And everything is an opportunity to negotiate for what I want. So I got to be willing to compromise on some things versus know what I want to stand firm on. So I would recommend a sales tip to analysts is go into this stakeholder engagement knowing what am I willing to bend on versus what hill I'm willing to fight on, right? That's the first piece. Second, a lot of sales people fail at closing deals because they don't fully understand the needs of their customers, and or they haven't figured out how to then take that need and align their solution, their offering with satisfying that need. And so the tip that I would give to analysts that applies to all business is seek first to understand in order to be understood, right? By Stephen Covey. First, go into that interaction with questions, even if you might know the answer. We call it get the customer in yes mode. So start asking them questions that are closed-ended around information that you kind of already know the answer to get them nodding and agreeing. So as you are leading up to ask your big ask, the thing you want, they're more likely to say yes, because that's how human behavior works. Salespeople understand this. So they will often do it to you. Next time you go into buy a car or something, or some purchase around furniture, watch the salesperson after you've been with them a while start asking you questions to get you nodding and agreeing before they ask for your money. It's crazy.
But isn't there also value in hearing the no to know what the limits are?
Yes, but I caution that because not every no is a genuine no. Sometimes a no is actually just a response, our natural response to being put in a sales situation. Here's another example outside of sales. You pull up to Walmart. It's Saturday morning. You get out your car and you headed up to the front. Who's at the front trying to sell you something? Girl Scouts. Always pushing those Girl Scout cookies, right? I might love Girl Scout cookies, but I might not have cash on me. And so when they're asking, do you want to buy cookies? I do the whole infamous pat down, as if I had pockets up here that I would keep my wallet in, right? But I do that pat and I say, I don't have any money right now, right? Sometimes it's just our natural reaction to a sales situation. And again, because we're trying to sell our idea, we're hearing a no as an involuntary reaction to buying from you.
But they're also making you think, so that as you go in, you're more likely to be thinking on the way out.
Absolutely.
It doesn't work anymore though with the Girl Scouts, because they got game to that, and they're like, oh, by the way, they take everything now. Anything. They'll take Square, they'll take PayPal, everything. So there's no excuse around that. You know, you just had random coins from like, oh, here's a hay penny. Like, oh yeah, you know what? We take hay pennies, and I'll tell you that's worth 72 cents now, and you know, whatever.
I've the new method that I've adopted is I take my glasses off and I say I can't see, and I just keep walking. I know that's mean. I ran out of excuses. Don't judge me.
I'm going to change his favorite after dark activity to being mean to Girl Scouts is his thing. So
I said that's during the daytime.
Oh man.
Yeah, morning.
Oh wait, hold on. I got it. Done. So in this case, it's Coach Vic. Check out your subheader there, or your title.
Me and the Girl Scouts.
There we go. That's right.
And your favorite activity is to be mean to your guests.
Actually, it's really anybody. So
Okay.
it's not necessarily. Yeah, it's everybody gets a turn.
Equal
That's the
opportunity.
I appreciate it.
Oh man, did you see this one?
I
hurts.
didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't.
You didn't.
But the real Vince. Inside
Real
the
show.
Yeah.
real Vince. We definitely have to connect.
Well, I
I
was
think
told
Boston's a great opportunity.
possible. Now, the real Analyst show. Vic and I had a conversation earlier. He said he was going to be on the real Analyst show, but he wasn't sure when it was going to happen. So it was, I don't know when it was going on. So it was just timing. This one happened first. So that's all, Vince.
You guys are petty after dark, I see.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Claws come out after dark.
That's it. Gloves come off. No, that's actually how we did get started. So this was started out as Analysts After Work, and then we had several people come up like Analysts After Dark, and then I just finally begged Vince. I'm like, listen, can I just do that? And can we just set that up? Like, well, Steve and I will just take this on. It'll be a lot of fun. And he goes, yeah, why not? And so that's how this whole thing got started.
That's what's up.
It is.
The power of collaboration, man. People don't leverage it enough. And I understand there's some bad apples who spoiled it for the whole bunch. But when you find good people, when you find the right people, man, the stuff we can accomplish.
I think community. Yeah. And, you know, there was a great community that was built during the pandemic. And, you know, I think we just wanted to continue that. There's a lot of extra time that we all had, you know, at home with each other. And then this was a great opportunity to reach out to each other and talk. So I know I appreciated it. And I think there's a few of us that would sit in Vince's show and just in the comments and try to derail it as fast as possible. But hey, he made it. He made
Who would
it.
do that?
I know. Steve Jones, who would do that? So another question. So we talked a little bit about your sales experience. Let's talk a little bit about your DEI experience. So you're doing that currently, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to change your header back now that as I go back, because we can't talk about that as you're mean to Girl Scouts. So
I appreciate that. It's not good for my brand.
I agree. And so Juneteenth or Freedom Day happened this week.
Yeah.
Right. And many people got this holiday off. So I was curious a little bit, and I think you and I had some conversation around that. So how do we show up for this day, and what are some of the different perspectives that you've encountered while trying to, you know, respectfully acknowledge it?
Yeah. You know, honestly, Juneteenth, I'm going to call it a working relationship with the holiday. You know, when I was young, my mom would always take us to celebrate New Year's Eve in church, right? And it was called Watch Night Service. But I didn't find out until I got older its connection to Juneteenth, which is the answer to your question, is leaning in to learn the history of the different cultures that make up this mosaic of people that we are. Whether it be Juneteenth or just a regular Thursday, we all have these unique backgrounds and contributions to the world, especially African Americans, you know, with the history in this country. But we all have a unique culture that I think is worth learning and leaning into. So what I try to encourage people from diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective is to think about times in our lives when we've felt left out, times when we felt excluded, times when we felt like we weren't seen, times when we felt like we didn't have a voice, we weren't heard. right? Think about that, because those things apply to all people from all races, all backgrounds, right? If that is true, then that means it's worth us having more empathy for our fellow person, our fellow people, right? That's the thing about it. We as a society are losing empathy for one another. We are forgetting what it's like to be in certain situations. And that's okay. That's a mistake that we made. But what do you do after the milk is on the floor? So from a DEI perspective, are you going to clean it up? Are you going to actively work to clean it up? Or are you going to sit around and complain? There's a number of different books that I try to stay abreast on, like Isabel Wilkerson's Cast is one of my favorite books. Just learning about history in the country, as well as history across the world.
One more time, you said Isabel
Wilkerson. Her book is called Cast. Okay. I think that's a great book for people to read. Zora
I will
Neale
add that to the show notes after this, so that way people can take a look at it and see what's going on.
Awesome. Yeah, there are some dope authors out there who have some incredible content. But I think for each person, they have to decide what matters to them as a person. What matters to them as a person? And then lean into that. If it matters to you to make people feel good after interacting with you, then take the time to learn about them. Like, I really try to give practical advice around helping people to feel included, such as if you're going to ask how a person's doing, slow down long enough to actually hear their response, because they might say that they were fine, but did the tone in their voice actually say they were fine?
Sure.
So for me, I want to give practical advice, but there are people who want to become practitioners in this lane, and that's where you got to educate yourself. There's a number of different degree programs, certifications that people can take that I've leaned into myself. But I really think it's a matter of changing hearts and minds. So what matters to you about the people you interact with and how you leave them? Then take the steps necessary to do that on a consistent basis.
So then, just to clarify a little bit, would you say like the first step is to try to understand perspectives, or just kind of be curious?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. You have to be. Curiosity opens the doors to innovation, right? You have to be willing to ask those questions. And I would imagine analysts oftentimes are asking those questions. They get very curious and they probably go down rabbit holes
all the time.
All the time, right?
That's what the show should have been called. It should just be called The Rabbit Hole.
The Rabbit Hole.
That's it.
That's its alternative name.
Yeah.
Right. But that's the start of how you discover some of the greatest innovations, right? Known to man. So you absolutely have to first be curious. And then I would say a second step is probably then being intentional.
Okay. So then intentional as in, not only am I curious about another person, culture, job experience, whatever, but then I'm also intentional on how I'm choosing to show up and learn. Is that
I think that's two-part. So how you show up in the world, how does your curiosity inform how you show up in the world? The other side of it would be intentional in how you then treat people as a result of interacting with you. Because just because you show up in the world a certain way doesn't mean that makes everybody feel good, right? So you got to be intentional in considering how you might land on people. And that by doing those two things, I think you'll find a happy medium.
So as you're in the hallway, at work, anywhere, if you're stopping to say, how you doing? Give enough time and effort to stop and listen.
Exactly.
Be intentional.
I do kind of like the drive-by, how you doing? It's not a question. It's I'm acknowledging you, but it's not a how's it going?
I really don't care, right?
Yeah,
I really don't care how you're doing. I'm just acknowledging that I saw you.
Keeps moving.
There's a lot of people that won't even make eye contact with you doing that.
Yeah.
I've had that too. Walking down the hall and some of the insurance companies with people acting almost like they were drunk with their finger on the wall, walking down the wall. with their head down until they get to the stairs and turn off. No amount of hi, how you doing? Trying to stop and say hi. Nothing. So there are people that want to interact. They might not acknowledge it until you say, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
Stop and see how the response is. And others make it clear they want nothing to do with other people. They just go.
A lot of my friends make fun of me. Well, just period, right? And then, but my favorite question to ask is, how are things? And I can tell by what they've told me how things are, and then what they've not told me. So if they go in and say, oh yeah, so work's been really busy with this and this and this, but I know that the last time we spoke, it was about something that was more personal, and they don't say anything about it. That to me is, they're telling me about work because they don't want me to ask about the personal thing, which the next thing I'm going to obviously do is ask about the personal thing, just because, hey, that's a little bit about who I am. But also, like, I'm curious. I want to know what's going on with someone. I want to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So
Stop
awesome.
and listen.
So then, last question for you: leadership development. What's the number one way that analysts can show up as leaders in their teams and organizations?
First, recognize that you are a leader of self, because when you look at leadership maturity, the way leaders evolve, the way leaders get better, everything starts with self. You have to learn how to master leading self before you can then graduate to leading others. And once you then master leading others, you graduate to learning how to lead an organization. So analysts can learn how to master leading self and lead self in a way that positively inspires people to get work done, to collaborate, to connect, to be innovative, provocative, curious, all those things we've talked about. But learn also how to master leading self in a way that challenges people to grow and that promotes personal and professional development. So absolutely, that is the number one step. Learn how to lead self.
And if they're not necessarily good at that, or if they have some struggles, some self-confidence issues, etc., what next?
Well, that's tricky. For me, I would often lean into learning about the person and what is it they want to accomplish. Because there's this thing, like, I've learned about in coaching leaders and working with people who aspire to be leaders. A lot of times when we have clarity on our goal and what we want to accomplish, and we see ourselves and where we are, when those two things align, we are thus more productive, more effective, more consistent. When things go off the rails, it's oftentimes because we no longer see those things aligning. I can't see where I am aligning with me achieving said goal. So I got to understand, where are we working towards, and have we lost sight of that? And if we have lost sight, how do we get back on track, back aligned? That's first and foremost. And then in that, instead of focusing on how big the gap is from where we are to where we want to be, because that can be discouraging.
Sure.
You have to then refocus the individual to look at the step in front of them rather than the whole staircase, not the whole journey. It's about taking the first immediate step, so that way we can get a sense of accomplishment, because that sense of accomplishment turns into encouragement, and encouragement turns into motivation, and motivation turns into determination, and then determination turns into consistency. And that consistency ultimately will allow us to achieve our goals.
So just small steps, constant steps, and then that gets us that consistency that you're talking about, just because it's not as scary. We've done it. We've been there.
Absolutely. We built up some confidence in ourselves. Again, learning how to master leading self.
So those small steps can lead to discipline.
Absolutely.
That's the problem for a lot of us.
Well, the question is, why do you think that is? Why is that a problem for many people?
That's a great question. Why is discipline a problem? Because people often don't want to be held accountable.
I would say that's probably 1A of every person's reasoning. What do you think, AJ?
I think it's comfort. We are biologically designed for comfort. So when things are uncomfortable, exercising, getting up in the morning, whatever it is, and we don't want to do it, then we have to actively fight that with our prefrontal cortex, fight, the amygdala, the little lizard brain, right?
Yep.
To say, I'm getting up, I'm doing this, I'm driven to this purpose.
Yep.
So our higher brain has to overcome our lower brain. And I feel like it's so easy, just like, I'm going to roll over and just 5 more minutes. And then that 5 minutes becomes, oh crap, it's 9:05,
Yep.
and then you're doing the whole race to, get to the office or whatever.
Yeah, panic prep.
One of my favorite books is called Do Hard Things, and it talks about that. Like, how do you learn how to do hard things? How do you program yourself to be consistent in executing? And it talks about the war within ourselves that's happening that oftentimes prevents us from being able to be consistent in executing. And that's not a respecter of, job title, race, religion, you name it. Like, every person has this going on inside of them. And it's just a matter of, do they have the tools, and are they accessible to the individual in order to overcome that challenge?
Yeah, another one of the books that I've read on a similar topic is called Switch by Chip and Dan Heath.
Yep, great book.
I'm going to put that in the show notes as well.
Yeah, that's a great book.
Yep. Very similar topic, and just talking about what it takes to actually make that switch in your head.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit, and let's check out the hotline.
That was a great segue. I saw what you did there.
What I do?
You talked about the book Switch and said we were going to switch topic.
Yep.
That was totally intentional, and I'm a genius.
Let's eavesdrop on the BA hotline and see what provocative project problems are awaiting us. Is your project in hot water? Operators are standing by. Ooh, that's hot.
All right.
Well,
The BA hotline.
can't wait to hear what comes off of this.
So Steve, do you want to take us away on the BA hotline?
Sure. So BA hotline is from Charlie in upstate New York. And Charlie's question is, his problem is about burnout. And he's seeking other people that have experienced a little burnout. Vic, how can you help us address burnout?
Well, first thought that comes to mind is what's causing the burnout. What was our caller's name?
Charlie.
Right? So if Charlie's experiencing some burnout, the first thought is what's causing it. Is it overwhelmed? Workload is just too much. Is home life responsibilities outside of work too much? People have this debate going on about work-life balance, but there should be a separation of church and state when it comes to work versus life. But like, how often is a person impacted at work based on what's happening outside of work and vice versa, right? It's kind of hard to separate those two things. So I'd be curious what's causing the burnout with Charlie. First and foremost, I don't know that any advice I would offer would be contextual to his specific situation.
So analyze yourself to some extent. Understand. Seek to understand.
Yeah.
We've heard that before.
There's actually a definition of burnout, and there's two. There's a study that was done by the leading scientist. Her name is Dr. Christine Maslach, and she's been doing burnout study and research for 50 years. She said the 3 key dimensions of burnout are overwhelming exhaustion, feelings of cynicism or detachment from the job, and a sense of ineffectiveness or lack of accomplishment. So I feel like that pyramid is 100% indicative of how we feel as BAs often, right? Just like we have all these different job responsibilities, and I don't know how many times this has happened to either one of you, but I've been on projects where I was the analyst and I was up front, and then before it actually went live, I was rolled off that project and thrown on another one. So then I never get to see the fruition of all of that work. I don't get to see the users and if they're elated or they're unhappy or either way. And so there's a lot of that. Well, here's all the work that I'm doing, but I don't see the payoff, right? I don't see what happens at the end.
Yeah. I've worked with several leaders who have talked about that. As we know, a lot of times when you serve in a leadership role, you're in service of others, and everything that you do, you don't always get to see the fruits of that labor. It can be a very thankless job.
Right.
A lot of us, and Do Hard Things taught me this. There are inherent needs that have to get answered, that exhaustion oftentimes is the product of when we don't get those needs answered. So one is having support as I work towards a goal.
Okay.
Support, right? A sense of community.
Yep.
Having the power of choice. So autonomy. There has to be a level of autonomy and freedom to choose and decide what I want to work on. Right. But then the other need that a lot of people, I guess, don't get satisfied is accountability. Knowing that there's expectations for me to perform, which speaks to that inherent need that my work has value. Gallup has done polls over the years assessing why people leave organizations. And among the top reasons you often find repeating, people leave because their work doesn't have value, or at least they feel like their work doesn't have value, and they don't feel a part of the community. It's not adhering or answering their inherent needs. And so for Charlie, our caller, and anybody else who might be experiencing burnout, I would look at those areas. Do you feel like you're getting support along the way? Do you feel like you have autonomy? And do you feel like you're making an impact, like your work has value? There's expectations for you to perform and contribute.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was going to list some of the main causes, and you nailed them. So unsustainable workload, right? I think we have that. If you are assigned 50% to 3 projects, that's 150%, right? So now how do you factor that in? Perceived lack of control. So if you don't control what requirements you're going to be working on or what projects you're going to be on, you're just thrown onto something, then it's easy to have burnout there because you don't feel like you have any sort of autonomy or authority in the work that you're pulling out.
And communication is going to help with all of those.
Yeah.
And sometimes whoever's assigning work, they just don't know. They don't stop to understand and figure out what you have.
Yeah.
Sometimes they know, sometimes they don't, and sometimes they just don't care. They'll do it anyway. But it's it's everybody's responsibility that if you're feeling overwhelmed, underappreciated, or not valued, speak up, talk to somebody, talk to your coworkers, talk to your management. It doesn't have to be a confrontational conversation, but awareness.
Yep. And I think nothing helped after COVID either. So after the pandemic hit, we were already kind of feeling this way. There's some studies that have shown that we've already been feeling that way. And then after COVID, then these scientists and researchers did a study of over 1,500 people and found that 89% of the respondents said that their work-life balance was getting worse. So 11% of people felt like, oh no, it's either not changed or it's getting better. Most people felt that work-life balance is getting worse. 85% said their well-being has declined. 56% said that job demands have increased. So that was actually something that I had studied a little bit when I was doing my imposter syndrome talk. And right before the pandemic, it was Deloitte had done a study saying that job requirements and job descriptions have increased by 30%. So 33% asking for more things to do. So you're doing a third of somebody else's job on top of doing the job that you were hired on technically.
Wow.
3 years previous.
Wow. Do more with less.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that has happened too. You ever seen that situation where someone got let go and then they're like, well, it's going to take us some time to find out, find a person to hire or find a person to bring on. And then they just never found that person. And now the team just absorbed that work. And then that happens again and again.
I see it all the time with leaders when they lose people. Whether it be key, contributors on the team, or just someone who just has a responsibility, a workload on the team. And while their intentions are not malicious, that work still has to get done. And so they'll ask various people on the team to step up, right? And a lot of times it's their top performers. Well, what do top performers do? They perform well. And so as the leader is looking to replace that individual, they're also noticing that there hasn't been a drop or a decline in performance because those top performers stepped up and took on the work. So by default, the leader says, well, maybe we don't need that anybody. Well, I think we're good. We figured it out. Maybe we were paying overhead unnecessarily. And that's unfortunate because that also is leading to burnout. Right. So I'm not telling people to work less hard when asked to take on responsibility. But what I am saying is consider your capacity for growth, your capacity for development long term, even if it's a temporary fix.
And capacity for sustainable work effort.
Right. I would encourage people to work less hard and invest in automation.
I know you do. I know that is your thing, but you're going to have to tell people, you're going to have to qualify that.
And invest in automation. Because you don't have to do all the things yourself. You can automate some of the things that you're doing, and working smart in this case is often better than working hard, because now I can get the same amount of stuff done without having to myself do a lot of the work that I was doing.
Yeah.
And what's considered getting done? The output.
Right.
Not everything in between. It's the output that needs to be done.
Right.
Automation works out beautifully.
Yeah. Another statistic as well is we found that Charlie's not alone. 62% of the people who were struggling to manage their workloads had experienced burnout often or extremely often within the previous 3 months. So that's not even just over the last year. That's 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Say
I feel like
that again.
It's 62% of the people who were struggling to manage their workloads had experienced burnout often or extremely often in the previous 3 months. So I don't feel like it's a one person thing. I know I've had it. It was a couple of years ago, and I remember literally laying on my floor face down, and I had to send one email, and that's what I had to do. And I was done. I just couldn't get that energy to get up and send it, and it was killing me.
Yeah.
I can't do this. And we were in Toronto, and we had a speaker there who was sharing her own experience with depression and things like that. And I feel like burnout often leads to anxiety and depression just because you've got nothing left. Your serotonin's gone. You just blown it out, and I can't muster that up for another day.
Yeah. That's a environment where absolutely depression can set in if you especially don't have a good support system around you. Community, the power of community is so important. It's so vital for growth and development. And I think not enough people have subscribed to one of my sales gurus that I've always kind of watched and listened to. Grant Cardone says your network is your net worth. Your network is your net worth. And when people really understand that, that's when they start to see progress. They start to be able to really grow. And so people have to find community. I often push that. So I'm with you on that.
I agree. And I would say, judging by anybody in this particular community, BAs tend to be fairly empathetic people. And, and I think that's one of the best things about going to the PMBA conferences is that you get a chance to be around people that are also thinking and feeling like you. And so it's nice to have that. And it tends to be a little bit more like that campy kumbaya sort of situation where you get to, just talk about it, but what someone's going through because you've actually been in their same shoes and you can feel that same energy. Say, oh yeah, I just did that last year or 2 years ago, or like here's how I got through that. And And then now you can actually build some camaraderie around just your shared experiences.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the in-person experience at a conference is so much better than just virtual. Virtual is too easy to just, oh, I'm not here.
Yep.
But when you're there, you're in person, it's easier to have a conversation.
Agreed. Well, we have one more segment, and I'll kick that one off. Here we go.
And now it's time for BA Confessions.
Right. EA Confessions. So this one is from, hopefully I'm pronouncing this name right, Fo E from their office. And this person confessed, I was in a meeting the other day and was not prepared. The project manager set up this meeting and invited me, but didn't tell me that I was expected to lead the several-day session. I was fed up the last day and was running out of questions for the group, so I pretended to be extremely interested in the project management portion of the meeting. I wasn't. I wanted to know specific details on how we'd be reporting progress. And then we asked the question, what was the result? How did it end? Result was the meeting spent arguing about the different ways that the various people in the room wanted to show progress, and I was off the hook. So that was from Phony.
So they threw a grenade and watched what happened? Is that what?
Yeah, just ask the question, watch it just spread around, and then quiet. Yes,
that's entirely intentional. Great diversion tactic.
Definite props, but at the same time, I think we've all been in that situation where you've walked into a meeting and didn't know that it was your meeting, right? You were invited to it and didn't know it was yours. You ever had that situation happen?
Absolutely. Delegation is a powerful tool to be used for you and against you.
Surprise delegation is a hateful tool.
That's true. That's true.
So part of my background, I did training and development for a long time, teaching people in the corporate space, right? How to execute on, the systems and whatnot that we operated with. Well, I have been asked into meetings as an observer. I'm just supposed to be there to take notes, sometimes even to give feedback to the actual facilitators and presenters. And out of nowhere, I've been called on and asked to answer a question for the topic in the room. And then asked, well, would you lead this part? Because they weren't prepared to teach that part or to lead that part of the discussion.
Yeah.
And that's a shame. So Harvard Business Review had an article a number of years ago, maybe even end of '99, on who's got the monkey. And it's really about how to build up your team and delegate. And that actually gets you off the hook because you're providing opportunity for somebody on your team to learn and give them an opportunity to grow. And it's taking some of the decision-making off of you, or, sometimes who's got the last review? Well, do I trust my team or do I not trust them?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's an opportunity for somebody else to learn some leadership opportunities and, provide opportunity. It gives other people a chance at autonomy, gives you a little breather. It's an incredible article that I read a number of years ago, and it's maybe about 10 pages, but it's fantastic if you're in a leadership position. And whether you lead people formally or informally, it has some opportunities for what you can do to provide opportunity, give yourself a break, and help build somebody else up. Because we're all better when we're all better.
Yeah.
I like that. I think we should just put that on the show. Like, we're all better when we're all better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Going back to the confession, listening to what Steve said, I hear a distinct difference in the two examples. The confession didn't have a goal that they were working towards because they weren't prepared for the meeting, right? What is all of this effort, conversation, all directed at? Versus what Steve shared in his example, we're delegating with a purpose where we have an outcome to build someone else up and maybe create opportunity. Therefore, the experience was so much better. And I think that that's where, whether you're a leader, an aspiring leader, or just recognizing yourself as a leader of self, having a clear vision on the destination makes the journey that much easier.
Yeah. And if we do have any PMs listening, don't do that. That's a jerk move. Don't just dish the ball, because sometimes the ball gets dished back. And so no one wants to play hot potato with the meeting. You're wasting everybody's time.
Here's a question that's been on my mind. I know the show is Analysts After Dark, but as I've connected with more analysts and PMs, I feel like there's some animosity between the two groups. Are PMs and analysts at war and the world doesn't know about it?
Not as much. There used to be a little bit of a war because back in the late 90s, early 2000s, often the career path was be a BA so you can become a PM. Sometimes the BAs on a project would report from an HR responsibility to the PM. At that point, most PMs could talk. They were political. They didn't have the HR awareness to be able to lead a team, develop a team. They're more about getting the project done. Some never got out of that mindset. And that left a bad taste for a lot of BAs. And, I don't want to grow up to be a PM. I love being an analyst. I can be in a leadership position and still be an analyst. There are skill set overlaps, absolutely. But there's a lot of leftover animosity for some.
I think the analogy that I use is that BAs and PMs are siblings, right? And so you can either choose to get along with your sibling or not choose to get along. Either way, you got to hang out together and you're all trying to do the same thing, right? And so you might have different perspectives, but you're all on the same team and you're all trying to show up and do the right thing, right? So you kind of have to be like the Osmonds, right? Or Jack White and his, like, I'm trying to think of another, brother, sister, or sibling combo that would have worked out, but
the Duttons on Yellowstone.
Okay.
You get great connections. You also get the fierceness.
Yeah. And somebody that spoke in DC, Sabi Warwick, he actually has his own session on PMs versus BAs, and we've had some conversations around it. I'd love to have a session where we just ping pong ideas back and forth and do that, but it's really not. It's not versus. It's with. It's just personality differences and what you prioritize. Difference.
I had a panel discussion in 2013 at PMBA Boston. It was exactly that. It was a panel discussion on PA versus BM, PM versus BA. Yeah.
There are no BMs on this session.
No.
We will not be doing that after dark. That's not how the show is going to run.
Nope.
So glad.
It's not that kind of a show. That's also going to go in the show notes. It's not that kind of a show.
Love it.
A little bit of scat.
Maybe that's the title of this episode.
That's right. That's right.
Last call.
All right. It's last call, everybody. So at this point, we've got a little bit of time left. Coach Vic, I want to talk about you for a second. Where can people find you?
Oh, man. The easiest and best place I say, go to coachviclive.com. That's my website, because that is my single source of truth in how to get connected with me. Obviously, all over social media, from Instagram, Facebook to LinkedIn, you name it, you can probably find me. On Instagram, I'm at Coach Vic 20, at Coach Vic 20. On LinkedIn, I'm Vic Nichols II. named intentionally the second, not Junior. My dad said I wanted him to be his own person. So I always try to share that little nugget. But yeah, man, CoachVicLive.com.
You got a podcast too, right?
I do. Purpose Addicts is our podcast. We've been doing it for a few years. Myself and my best friend, two friends who went two very different paths, find themselves 20 plus years later headed in the same direction, which is towards their purpose. And so what we try to do is help people discover, walk in, and fulfill their purpose. It's a great show. We've been having a lot of fun. We're into our third season now. We've had a lot of great guests like yourself, AJ, Steve. You got to get ready because season 4, we're kicking it off and we're diving into the tech side of the industry.
I love it.
Season 4 coming.
I'm not going to lie. I may have borrowed a little bit of your co-conspirator content for this show. That might have been in the headline if you heard it. Well,
hey, everything is borrowed. It's okay.
Little BA confession right there, a live one. I'm a thief.
Says every BA.
Yeah, that's right.
As long as you attribute, all good.
I did it live. It happened. Yeah.
Look, talking about where to find me, a LinkedIn user said, I'm everywhere except Twitter. And that's right. I had to get off Twitter. Twitter was a mess. A lot of social media is a mess, but Twitter was a mess. And that wasn't my platform. That wasn't my community.
Understood. I have an account. I've not used it in a long time. And I think I just need to shut it down. I think that's what needs to happen. And LinkedIn is going to be it. So, well, thank you so much for being on the show, Coach Vic, for being our first guest. This has been fantastic. I had a lot of fun.
I did too, man. I'm humble. I'm grateful that you all asked me and allowed me to join you. This has been an awesome experience.
It's always fantastic seeing you. Thanks for everybody else for joining. And just so you know, I'm now getting royalties for plugging Amy's shows or Amy's conferences. So
she wants the royalties.
Yeah. And then we need to take a little bit of time to hear from our sponsors. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. All right. Nope, not that one. Definitely not that one. Could be this one. It's that one. All right. Just want to say thanks to our sponsors. And now I'll be getting royalties from Amy. We'll keep that on the down though. No one heard it. So thank you all very much. Thanks for joining us this evening. We will be back in 2 weeks with the fantastic Jamie Champagne. She'll be joining us, and it's the day after 4th of July, so I'm sure everyone's going to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed coming in after work that day, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. So hopefully we all show up there with all of our fingers. And I just want to say, as always, we encourage you to stay curious.
And stay positive.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.